Hello and welcome to Men in Progress, podcast of the United Methodist Men of Trietsch and part of the Life Plus God podcast series from Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church here in Flower Mound, Texas. I'm Dave Casey. I'm a longtime member of the men's group here at Trietsch and just one of many guys here that are trying to live out our faith and grow our relationship with Jesus Christ. Over the past 9 months doing this podcast, we've learned a lot. Primarily that while we all share our faith in Christ, the paths we take to reach Him and the paths we choose to grow deeper in our faith are very personal. Spiritual practices are super meaningful to some, different from those, and it works different for everyone. So that's what we're going to discuss in this episode of Men in Progress. So to help me discuss our go-to spiritual practices, I'm joined by three of my brothers from Trietsch, Buddy Bonner, Eddy Evans, and Brad Evans. Now, the first thing I have to ask is the Evans, your Evans brothers, Evans cousins?
No relation.
No relation. Gosh.
But a lot of parallels.
A lot of parallels.
I like to say we're the Bizarro Evanses.
Oh, Bizarro Evanses. Well, that will come out in the podcast, I'm sure. So
Or
welcome.
you can call us the Bevins and the Gevins.
That's right.
Super. All right. Well, this is going to be an interesting evening, I guess, because spiritual disciplines is something that, like I said, it means something different to everyone. So the first one we're going to talk about is reading Scripture. So, Buddy, how important is Scripture in your faith walk?
I would say of the spiritual practices that is probably the most important. I had the great opportunity to take Disciple 1 some time ago, and if you're familiar with that, you read bits and pieces of the Bible each day, culminating in the week, and you have discussion. So after that, I went through and I endeavored to read the rest of the parts I didn't read, and was pretty successful there. And then within the past 18 months or so, I've started to go back through, and so not as diligently. I need to be more diligent. But to me, it's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, and Disciple 1's a big undertaking. I mean, it's how many weeks is that?
It's 36 weeks 36. With Scott Wisenhunt. That needs to be noted.
That is a lot.
So that's like 72 weeks in the real world. Yeah,
at least.
I see what you're saying.
Thank goodness for Scott, though.
Well, super. So, Brad, how about you?
I would agree with Buddy. I think that Scripture and diving into that is at least for me, the most important spiritual practice. I've always had a hunger for learning more for the Bible and investigating it kind of inside and out. I've also done Disciple a few years ago, not with Scott, fortunately or unfortunately maybe, but I've read the Bible, just through a few times, and I'm very much a creature of habit and need a routine, and so part of my morning routine whenever I wake up in the mornings is usually go to the gym, and then I sit down for at least 20 minutes, sometimes not long, sometimes longer, with my Bible, with commentary. I've gone through different commentaries, just kind of diving more into Scripture and trying to learn more.
Well, that sounds like a great start to the day. Just
yes,
kind of
definitely.
Get you centered and ready to take it on. So, Eddy, is that you agree is one of your top spiritual?
Yeah, I think it's super important, and I do think it's a way to always get centered. I think when things go, when life just takes over and things get busy, it's always the easiest way to come back. And I use it mostly when there's, something I feel like I need to investigate or look at, and that usually finds a lesson or something, and then you start to read to follow up or learn, I guess the point that you were chasing on the front side. And I actually find it's even more important to use the actual Bible and, like read the book, as opposed to digital pieces these days are so easy and they're very handy, but I also feel like they're full of just as many distractions as anything else, right?
I'm teaching one right now, and it's interesting because I'm trying to do it all digitally, and it's almost impossible. You just can't get a screen big enough to get all the pieces in front of you. So I ended up with the Bible open, and then I've got two things on the computer, and I got something on my phone, and I'm trying to do all this. And it is something to tackle. Well, the other thing I have found too, and I don't know if you guys have seen this, is that the Bible is something that's very common. That the we can talk to people from any Christian faith, and the Bible's kind of a commonality. And in fact, even with my Jewish friends, the first half of the Bible, obviously, we can have discussions. And I have a great friend that, 20 years ago or something, we're in a business group together, and we were meeting on a regular basis. His attendance started to drop off, and so he sends out this flame mail to all the group, the guys that were supposed to be coming every week, and it says, hey, we got to be accountable and show up and everything. So I commented to him, that was a great epistle that you set out there. And he goes, I had to go look up epistle. I don't know what that did. And I said, hey, there's a whole half of the Bible you're missing, pal. It's just like, so, but it is a real, it is a great thing. And I think it's a very centering thing. So another spiritual practice that is, I think, common probably to all of us is prayer. And how does prayer enter your life? And Eddie, I'll start with you. How does that?
Well, I think prayer is, again, it's a very centering thing. I always joke I can't sleep. Somewhere around my 30s, I don't know, raising kids, whatever it is. Yeah, I can't sleep, and so prayer. The first thing I do is usually that's what centers me at night to try to help me get back to sleep. But it's also just a thing that I use to try to relax or start my day. So I have a couple of dogs, and walking the dogs every day around a pond is a part of my routine every morning. And usually when I'm making that trip, that's when I'm kind of thinking about the things. I'm going through my list of prayer requests and stuff that you've heard about in the week, or just picking things up. Over Lent, there's a group of us decided that we would pray for each other. A group of men decided we would pray for each other every day during that time period. And then, you find that habit just pick back up, and it keeps with you, right? And so it was something that you just did for that time frame, and then all of a sudden I find myself doing it every day still. So it's a good piece. It's calming. It's some people might use like a meditation or something like that, but I find it's a real nice way to be able to do that.
Oh, that's super. Buddy, how about you?
Not as consistent as I need to be. Try to every day, right? And let's talk about prayer for a second. Is that vocalized in a quiet space, or are those internal conversations you have with God? Are they fleeting thoughts that you have, wishing peace or health for someone? So I'm going to say yes to all that.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm doing better than I think I am, but
I assure you are.
but mindful that I need to continue to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And not get caught up in everything else that takes your attention. Philippians 4:6 says that you should pray about everything, right? And
unceasingly, right?
I'm sorry?
Unceasingly,
yes. Yeah. With thanksgiving and supplication, it says. So I used to think, God doesn't want to worry about the little stuff. Yeah, he really does.
Yeah.
So that's comforting to me.
Yeah, we've got a couple things that are tied to that too that I think we'll get into as we go further. So the next one up is worship, and worship's changed a lot in the last few years. So we went through the period of COVID where worship dramatically changed. So Brad, what role does worship play in?
I think worship is very important. It's always been important to me. It's evolved over time for me and my family as well. Funny, my wife Amanda is a classically trained singer, and when we were looking for a church, our ultimate worship experience at the time up to that point was it has to be a certain type of music, and it needs to be traditional, and it needs to be this and that. And it's funny that over time we've kind of gotten away from that, and we are fed much more by the contemporary worship setting. And so I think music is a big part of worship for me. And COVID, I struggled with COVID because being as introverted as I am, being with others and worshiping with others in a setting, hearing the live music, that's just essential part of the worship experience. So yeah, getting back into the churches was huge.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think, put in a plug for Trietsch. I think our church did a fantastic job from a media standpoint of keeping people engaged, and the online worship experience was exceptional.
Absolutely.
But even given that, again, it really, after a few months, it got to be like, wow, I'd give anything just to be in the room, and I sing in the choir, so it was really hard. I mean, and we tried some virtual choir, everybody singing from home. That didn't work out very well. So technology is good, but it wasn't that good to cover up our mistakes. But man is definitely a blessing for this church and for all of us. I mean, because that is an important part of worship. So Eddie, how do you feel in the worship experience?
Yeah, I would agree. I personally am not. I can't sing worth a lick, right? And I grew up in a Catholic church, and so there wasn't nearly the
as did I. We had
praise,
the 4 hymns,
right? Yeah, the praise value. And so I was actually kind of at first, as a young adult, maybe a little uncomfortable. Like, I don't know if this belongs in the service. But actually, the Rain Band was one of the reasons why Emily and I chose this church a long time ago to continue to come to. And it was a different feeling, and it's something that I really enjoyed, moving forward. And my kids participate, and they're they inherited my genes. They're terrible singers as well, but they're in the youth choir with Amanda, and they love every minute of it. It's just it's a different feeling that comes about. And I think even as my kids move off into college, the church homes that they look for when they're on the road has that piece. Like it's an entertaining piece, but it's also exciting. It's just something that you feel the spirit, right, when it's there, and so it's a really nice piece to have, I think.
Yeah, and it's and this church is probably not unique among churches, but I think we do have the advantage of having really 3 different worship experiences. Mm-hmm. So we have the a small group experience at early at 8:30, and it's definitely within that group. I mean, it's communion every Sunday, and everyone knows each other very well. There's some music. There's some, there's the message and everything. Then we have a contemporary service, which is a whole different experience, and then more of a traditional service at 11, which we normally attend. Although a lot of times I will usher at 9:30 as well. But it's a myriad experience. And Buddy, what's your favorite part of the worship at Trietsch, I guess?
The whole thing, honestly. I don't like to miss. If I miss, it's probably because I'm out of town. Yeah. I
you don't have that golf. We had some guys on a few weeks ago. Golf was their main.
I don't do any of that. And I suppose you can replace worship different days of the week or that sort of thing. We probably need to be open minded to that. It doesn't have to be on Sunday per se. Maybe it does, but I like the body corporate experience. Just like we have 3 distinct service types. I think we're blessed here to have good preaching teachers, right? Daniel is outstanding. Yeah. Doug is great. And, we've had a series of younger pastors come in, but I'm really impressed with Gracie a couple times in.
Definitely so.
So we're very fortunate and blessed there. We're blessed to have great music. Whether it's traditional or contemporary. So maybe I'm just a homer, but I don't like to miss.
Well, we'll put you on the ads for Trietsch. Yeah. So you'll be the guy. You'll be the guy. So the next one is something Brad alluded to a few minutes ago, and that's we talk about meditation. But in addition to prayer, I think silence and meditation are a spiritual practice. It's taken me a while to actually adopt that but I have in the last several years. In fact, several years ago, we have a camp in the summer for kids from West Dallas that we bring to Trietsch, and we had an outside facilitator come in and teach meditation, and we're talking teaching meditation to middle school and high school kids, but also the adult leaders that were there as well, and it really made an impression on me as to how to meditate. And how to basically just lock down and just empty your mind and think about things. So, Brad, is that something that you can do, or is that part of your spiritual journey?
So I love silence, but I don't know that I'm a good meditator, and I probably need to work on that. I've never had any special training or classes like you're referring to. Maybe my mind races all the time too much. It's hard for me to sit and empty my mind.
Yeah.
The same goes for prayer. Actually, I probably could be better at that. I like what Buddy said about defining what's the definition of prayer. But even that, I feel like, it has to be done a certain way, and it has to be very formal. And so it's always refreshing for me to be reminded that this is just a conversation with God, and
Sure.
Even being childlike, which I will admit that I am in my prayer. That's okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
So
definitely. Eddie, have you tried meditating? Is that part of your regimen?
I don't know if it's meditating per se, but I have fallen back on times where I'll go to the old Catholic in me, and almost similar to the rosary, but not actually praying the rosary, right? Because there's a lot of extra prayers in there. But it is essentially that idea of that repetitive prayer we kind of talked about before. And I took a class with Lee Jarrell one time, and he talked about, praying, without ceasing in terms of breathing as well, right?
Yeah.
And that was like a really interesting piece. And he sort of taught like a line, to kind of help with it. But I'm far too ADD to actually sit there and do just like one thing over and over again. So that's kind of why I break into that sort of list of other prayers, and that helps.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't sit there just and do it for an extended period.
Yeah, and it's it is a discipline, I guess, and it's probably defined different ways too. I mean, it just to get someplace with maybe headphones on and just be quiet and just just lock everything else out. Sometimes that helps. So we're going to jump to something else. I'm going to start with Buddy on this one, and that's something I think that this church is fairly good at, and but it's evangelism. Have you felt the call to be an evangelist, or do you feel you are one?
No. So September 11th, Daniel talked about 7 spiritual practices.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so thinking about this, I think it's similar to witness, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an educator, for anybody that doesn't know that, retired educator. I kind of penciled in a grade for myself on each of those spiritual practices. And evangelism and witness, absolute worst.
Oh, yeah.
Absolute worst.
So I won't see you at my door? Is that what you're saying?
No, you will not. Although, as I get older and maybe more comfortable and knowledgeable as I read, it's easier to have those conversations informally with people, right?
Yeah.
A better comfort level there. But as far as I'm Buddy Bonner from Trietsch, and I'd like to tell you that I'd like to spread the good news.
Yeah.
No, not yet, Dave.
Want to join us this Sunday?
Yeah, not yet. Occasionally we'll do that.
Yeah.
Very occasionally. So I've work to do there, Dave.
All right, man. We'll put you down. We'll give you a needs improvement. I got a lot of those on my report cards over the years. So
that's where it was.
So, Brad, how about you? Is it evangelism a part of your spiritual practices, do you think?
Maybe in a way. I don't know that I would use that word, even though that's probably the correct word to use. But like Buddy, you're not going to hear me knocking on your door anytime soon. That's just not my personality. But I might wait for opportunities to present themselves. I'm a physician, and I see a lot of patients during a day, and many times the opportunity will present itself, and even though I don't feel like I'm in anybody's face about it, I do talk about God when the opportunity presents, and I think most of the time it's well received, but I don't know that I personally don't know that I would call that evangelism, but maybe it is. If you just asked me, I would say that's also something I need to work on, most likely.
Yeah, and I think it's something. I was making a joke with Buddy about the door knocking, but I think that's the way a lot of times we think of evangelism is somebody with a pamphlet that's in your face, and there's many ways that you can have an impression on others, and it sounds like you do that very, very well at work for sure. Do that, Eddie. Is it something you've encountered over the years, or?
Yeah, I have to agree with the guys. I don't think I could stand and do that. I look at that side as, I think missions has always been something important to us and our family, and I think that's where we would see it. Just kind of showing up as an example, and that's when you get out into the community and you're doing things for them, and that presents usually the opportunity to discuss. And I think, even in our workplace, when I can talk to them about taking a week or to go with my kids on a mission trip or something like that presents the opportunity, and that's probably where it is. I don't think I'd have the confidence to stand up in front of a person like that.
Well, and I bet you that's a lot more effective in many ways, than standing in front of somebody and saying, "Do you know Jesus?" That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But and what you just alluded to is actually part of our next topic, which is serving others. And I know you three guys are active servants within this church, but where does that fit into your spiritual practices, buddy, in terms of?
So the spiritual gifts test that we do here, I think what I do at Trietsch as quote unquote service is right in line with those. My desire, I guess, or my place is to help in leadership, serve in that way, and so that's what I've been able to do, and I appreciate that. The older I get, either here or out in the community, is more service driven than anything else.
Well, that's pretty obvious for us, because you had a full career as an educator, and right after that, you left, but immediately ran for school board, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, to have to want to turn around and serve the community right back.
Well, it's at the end of the day, that's about all I want to really focus on. And I've had great role models in that. There's this community at large, not just Trietsch, has a lot of great service-oriented role models and organizations.
Sure do.
And so if that's a desire of yours, let's talk.
Yeah, definitely there. Brad, is that part of your spiritual disciplines?
Yes. Service is very important. I think we're all called to do that. I think just as a church, Trietsch, that's one of its biggest strengths. The service opportunities here at Trietsch are just amazing. I always feel like I could do better. Sure, certainly I've served in different capacities, and this and that, but yes, it's a very important part of a spiritual discipline, no doubt.
Super. So the next one is a little tenser subject, so I'll just jump into this one, but it's stewardship. And we're coming into the season, actually, where the church every year goes through a stewardship campaign. And so, Eddie, what do you see is stewardship part of your spiritual practices, and how does that fit in?
Yeah, it's funny. It always seems to be a very, very touchy subject. I think one of the other things I took from Lee Jarrell at one point in time was, I think the only point in the Bible where God says, "Test me on this," is when he talks about tithing, right?
Yeah,
when he talks about giving your tithe, and he will reward you for it. And that speaks volumes, right? And we've always kind of looked at it too as not necessarily, am I giving 10% of the income that comes in back to the church, but kind of just looking at all the gifts that we have and making sure we're trying to sort of use all of the resources, I guess, given to us. And are we giving back to not just, the church, the home church that we have, but other churches as well, right? Sure. Or the community in general, right? Because I think that's super important. It's an example, just like we kind of were talking about with missions and being the hands and feet of Christ. We had a friend who was raising a church in downtown Dallas, and they were all basically like immigrants and Latinos, and he learned Spanish and he spoke Spanish, and it was a really poor church, and so we gave sometimes to that church as well, just as another way, and considered that part of what we were doing in terms of trying to help. So we always kind of look at it maybe as like a total package kind of thing, as opposed to just the income, but it's obviously important just because like you can start to see how things like that change people's lives.
Definitely.
It's important.
So, Buddy, in terms of that, stewardship is beyond monetary too. So there's giving of time,
right?
And I think how is that? I think that fits in with you. I've watched the things that you do and the amount of time you spend with them. So.
Yeah, I think time and effort maybe is part of that, but the financial is there too as well. And Eddie, I appreciate you saying that the only part of the Bible that says to challenge God is related to tithing, because that brought back to me. I'm sitting there at the back where I sit. This has been 6-7 years ago, and it's stewardship campaign. And Daniel said, if you'll increase your tithe and you're not blessed, I'll give it back to you. I thought, oh my gosh, here we go.
There's an ironclad contract there.
It was kind of used car salesman,
right?
And I'd already been thinking about that.
Yeah.
But here's the deal on finances and that sort of thing. The human condition is you're never going to have enough, ever.
Correct.
You're never going to have enough,
or think you have,
enough.
Yeah.
And so the stewardship piece that typically comes here is the stair-stepped, where are you?
Yeah.
Can you give 1% more? Do 1% a year and build, And so it's like Zan Holmes said when he was here, the church has enough money, we just need to get it out of your pocket into ours.
Exactly. That's a great way to look at it. Oh, man. So next one is one that I've got to say I failed miserably at, but I'll throw it out there for you guys. I'll start with Brad, is fasting. Is fasting a part of your spiritual discipline?
We actually just talked about fasting a little bit in our Sunday school class a couple of weeks ago and what that means. I think when the first thing you think of with fasting is abstaining from food, and certainly that's a part of fasting, but I think it's really just more broad than that, and abstaining from anything that might have a hold on you in order to come closer to God. Do I do that well? Probably not.
Yeah. I've seen that like during Lent. Now people will say, in lieu of giving up something, I'm going to give up social media, or I'll give up something that, like you said, they feel like has a hold on them.
Yeah. I think it can be a very effective tool, for sure, for a lot of people. Yeah.
Eddie, are you a faster?
I've never done it specifically. I mean, so you brought up Lent, and that's where I think the Catholic upbringing really focused on, so
Fish Friday.
And so a lot of that has stuck for sure. Besides cheese sandwiches and tomato juice is always good, so that Friday meal never hurts. But I think even like my siblings and I, that's a way for us to keep in touch sometimes, is to talk about, like, are you still giving something up for Lent, and what are you giving up, and then be there to support each other, because we do it is simple things. But Lent was, or I guess lately as an adult, that's where we've kind of come to learn the difference in fasting. And as I mentioned before, like when we this last year, we kind of took it up to pray for each other as our piece of, that, and to replace giving something up. So it's definitely taken a lot of meetings, but I think, the comfort in you kind of goes back to what you did as a child. And so we'll still pick something that we maybe indulge in too much and try to give up and see if we can stick to it.
Forego. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. One of my small groups, we had one of the members really talked about the idea of fasting from food for 24 hours on a periodic basis is really, really, from a physiological standpoint, is positive. It's really a good thing. And it's not something that it's something your body really needs. You're not denying your body. You're actually helping it doing that. So that's kind of interesting. And again, I've failed miserably. I haven't tried that one. So our last question, I'll say our second to last question is about journaling. And this is something that I've tried to do with moderate, well, I'd say limited success, not even moderate success. But Buddy, are you a journal guy?
I'm not currently. I have been in very limited instances in the past, but I don't currently.
Yeah.
In a professional context, I did and found great value in it. So I have no doubt it's not beneficial, but I'm not
Something you're doing. Brad, how about you?
I'm absolutely terrible. That's probably what I'm most terrible at, least favorite. I respect.
That's kind of part of what you do as a physician. You have to kind of
maybe
journal.
I get burnt out
Yeah.
with the charting,
Yeah.
I would call it, which I guess is in a way journaling. But
Yep.
no, I absolutely respect the people that do it, and I completely see the value in it. Even going back and looking at what you've written down, I wish I did it more. And but no, that's not my forte.
Yeah. Eddie, about you?
Yeah, I'm with these guys. I've done it before. Usually it comes with a lesson or something, and you start to think, and so you'll pick it up for a little while, and you'll see the benefits, and you're like, wow, why don't I do this more often?
Yeah.
But it's just not something I can keep up with.
I tried it I used to, with Scouts, I taught one of the merit badges within Scouts is called personal management, and it's really a valuable exercise, and it's largely financial. But there's one of the things that's in there is keeping a journal as well. And so you're asking a kid that's 14, 15, 16 years old, they've got to keep essentially a journal of every penny that comes in and out of their pocket for 13 weeks, and then a journal really on what's happening in their life for 13 weeks. It's part of the deal. And so I forced myself into the same thing since I was teaching it to them, and it's incredibly hard to really stick with it, and to not fall back from that. So I really respect people that journal on a regular basis. And when I did do it with a little bit of success, it was interesting because you could kind of go back a couple of years, and what was so dramatically important to you 2 years ago is meaningless today in a lot of cases. So it's to me, that introspection is well worth it. So the last one is kind of tied to this, and it's study. And I think this has to do with Bible study, maybe in reading the Bible, but other studies outside that as well. So, and again, I'll start with Brad on this one. Are you involved in a study, ongoing study, I should say?
I have at various times in the past. I'm not currently involved in a formal study. Well, let me take that back. I think as part of our Sunday school class, we've started looking at the YouVersion devotionals, and we do talk about those on Sunday throughout the week, and so that is a form of study. Now, I do my own personal study pretty intensely most of the time, I would say. I mean, with Bible and commentary, but it's just me, myself, and I, which I like, but I'd also like and understand the need for gathering with other people to do that as well.
Yep, definitely the corporate side. Buddy, how about you?
Well, I really like what Brad just said. I'm not currently involved in any studies other than individual reading, and hats off to you for pulling commentary out and supplementing it right. But absolutely, there's great value in that. Done that in the past and enjoyed it, so really need to get back to that.
Yep, it's something. So I'll direct this one to Eddie. So this is must be something you may think about a little bit. But can you think of a time in your life when one or more of these spiritual practices really helped you get through a tough situation?
Wow.
See, I got you. So the other two guys get to think while you're answering.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny, actually. I guess not too long ago, I worked for Hasbro. I was a toy salesman, and when Toys R Us shut down, they let a lot of people go, and I was a part of that. I got let go, and I really did love that job.
Who wouldn't love selling toys?
Yeah,
gosh.
And I got I was selling action figures of all the movies I got to watch growing up. And,
wow.
And so that was not good. That was a really, really tough moment. And even though I found it, turned out to be a blessing. There's a time where you're transitioning, and like right at that particular point in time, the opportunity, because of my spiritual gifts, to become a Stephen minister appeared, right? And so I kind of went through that class at that time, and
you might explain that for our listeners.
Yeah, so a Stephen minister is essentially, a person who's gone through the training that can just help be a sounding board for someone, right? You're there to listen to somebody's problems or issues. So somebody who has an issue and they want to talk to someone and they don't know who to go to, and they want it to be a private, confidential conversation, right? That's not out in the public, they can go to the church and request a Stephen minister, and
so
the
you're
church
not
will pair
a counselor per se, but
Correct.
you're kind of that first line of
you're a first line. So obviously, if something were incredibly wrong, if we felt like somebody was super depressed or even mildly depressed, right? We can't prescribe anything or whatever, but we're there to be a confidential, sort of sounding board and listen to them and try to help them. And it can be a really, really, important piece to someone's life, right? Especially if they're maybe getting just past the grieving issues or whatever they may find. And I found going through that process and learning how to help others really helped me more than just, as anything else. And,
Sure.
and you
so to help you through that job transition.
Right.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives you a perspective on things, and it really it was just an amazing thing that kind of helped me sort of kind of get through those weeks and it just kind of not only be able to do something productive, but also learn a little bit more about myself and have a skill. And that all came about because I had done the spiritual gift study or whatever, and somebody just happened to send an email and said, "Hey, would you be willing to do something like this?" So I kind of look at that as the blessing that showed up for me.
Oh, that's great. Great. So, Brad, I'm going to ask you this one. What would you say to people that are struggling to make, spiritual practices a regular part of their lives? Is there anything you've done to make any of these spiritual practices, meaningful to you that you could express to others?
Yeah, that's hard. But I do. For me, for all of us, there's some things that come easily and naturally, and of course, those are going to be the things that any one person gravitates toward. I think being pushed by others, for example, me doing this podcast. Who would have thought that?
Yeah.
This is just not
well, luckily,
my jam.
somebody pushed you into it, so we're very happy about that.
but just being pushed by others to get a little bit out of your comfort zone, if that's what it takes. Having a routine, being regular at worship. I think that's, at least for me, that's very important. Even if you don't feel like doing something, just knowing that, okay, this is the routine. I think that can play a big role.
Super. So, buddy, the next one is for you, and it's, do you have any, I don't know how to describe it, maybe a go-to spiritual resource that you love, whether it's a books or podcast, or, this wonderful podcast we're on is a resource for, I know, many of us. So.
I'm going to give you probably a trite answer.
All right.
But it's my Bible.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the go-to you'd maybe expect, but I've had it forever. It was falling apart.
Physical Bible.
Physical, yeah. I've got one on this phone too, and that's kind of a backup, which is a great resource because it has a lot of plans and that sort of thing. So can't speak highly enough about that. But I've had it recovered. I've had it put back together again because it's got all my notes, and so that's my go-to. Stays on the side of the bed. So I can get my hand on it pretty easily. Just need to do so more often, right?
Yeah.
Like every day. Like every day. So that's mine.
Oh, that's awesome. That is incredible. So, okay, I'm going to ask each of you this. So this is kind of our last question. And, as you guys know, as members of Trietsch, our mission is to lead people to a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. And for those that may be listening or that you run into that haven't found a church, they don't have a faith family, and they haven't even thought past that to a relationship with Jesus Christ, which of these practices that we've talked about has been the most meaningful for you? And I think you kind of said yours is the Bible. Brad, is there a particular spiritual practice?
I don't know if I could limit it to just one. I think that worship is very important. I think that study is very important. What really got me plugged in, and some of the best friends through this church that I still have, is through the walk to Emmaus. Profound experience, and I think spiritual retreats like that, and then continuing study. For me, it's just important to find a group of people that are welcoming and that you click with.
Yeah, definitely so. Eddy, about yourself?
Yeah, I would have to say it's study. I mean, I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier with as my kids grow up and they become young adults. I was just with my daughter this last weekend at her college, and she took me to the church she wanted to start going to, and it was a different denomination, right? And I told her, I said, it doesn't matter to me what church you go to, right?
Very thankful if they're going to church.
Right. But
Exactly.
it's a part of it is like if you want to learn about God and Jesus, like wherever that is, wherever it takes you, just always be open-minded and learn, right? You don't, whoever that guy is on the stage, you don't just take whatever he says for granted because he said it and somebody said he's the leader, right? Like you take things in, you learn about it, you process it, you ask questions, you challenge it, and then you go find the answers. And so I think, to me, that's the study, right? And so I think that's where kids will learn to grow, and that's how I've done it myself. I think that part is most important, because then you're learning things for yourself, and whatever wherever your questions arise, if you go find that answer, that's going to be more impactful than just listening to somebody else's teachings.
That
right?
discernment part, of actually going through that process. Yeah, I agree. Well, guys, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. So there you have it. That, I think, is episode number 9 of Men in Progress, and we hope that you were blessed in the way that we went through about things, and you'll join us for our next discussion. I want to thank my brothers from Trietsch, Eddy Evans, Buddy Bonner, and Brad Evans for joining me, and to the church production team for helping us put these podcasts on. As it says in Proverbs, as iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. And that's the whole purpose behind this podcast. And we thank you for joining us, and for our Christian, we just enjoy being Christian men, trying to be better fathers, husbands, leaders, and just better men. I'm Dave Casey, and we'll see you next time.
This episode of the Men in Progress podcast is sponsored by Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church, where our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. If you're in or near Flower Mound, Texas on any Sunday morning, we would love to welcome you to any of the Trietsch services. Or you can follow our services anytime on our Facebook page or at tmumc.org.